Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Year of the Maker session. It's good to have you all with us. I see a lot of familiar faces, but also a lot of new folks, which is awesome. So if any of you don't know who I am, my name's Maria Marquis. Here at Coda, I focus on education. So in other words, how can we translate all of these features into things that you can use every day? And luckily, I'm also here with a celebrity, Shishir, our CEO from Coda. And the two of us are going to be working together today to just have a bit of a chat about reflections on 2019, looking forward to 2020, and also making sure we have tons of time for your questions. So before I have Shishir introduce himself to all of you today, I just want to do a little bit of a technical orientation to our tool, Crowdcast. So if you haven't joined us before, there's a few things to know about how to get in touch. So the first thing is you've already explored a couple, which is cool. Over on the right side of your screen, we have a chat area. Feel free to post ideas there, thoughts, feelings, ideas. One of my colleagues, Evan, is there in chat, ready and waiting for any ideas and questions that you have. But if you do have a question today, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of conversation happening in that chat area, I would ask, so that we don't lose it, that you click on the Ask a Question button right below Shishir and my faces. That way it'll be logged, we won't lose it, and you can also upvote and downvote each other's questions. So if there's something that you're like, ooh, that's also something I care about, feel free to use that area. That's a great way to get in touch. We'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the session, and we'll also have plenty of time at the end. So with all that housekeeping business out of the way, Shishir, want to just introduce yourself to the group? Tell us a little bit about you, your life story in 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Hi, everyone. So excited to do this. Happy New Year. I'm Shishir Malhotra. I'm one of the founders of Coda. We started the company about 5 years ago.
So amazing. I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, 2014. This will be our 6th year. And before that, I spent about 6 years at Google. I was responsible for the YouTube products. And before that, I spent about 6 years at Microsoft and started a company before that called Centrata.
Awesome. Cool. So we've got a man, a myth, a legend here with us today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our chat. So the first thing, like Shishir said, Happy New Year. This is our first event of the year. And I thought it'd be kind of fun, Shishir, just to hear from you, like your reflections on 2019. How'd it go? How'd you feel about it? And to share a little bit about that retrospective.
Yeah, I think it's... I was just putting together the summary for the team and for the board as we kicked off the year, and just reflecting a little bit. For those of you that have been following along with Coda for some time, will remember that at the beginning of 2019, we weren't even launched yet. So
that's right.
We were in a closed beta. You had to sign up and wait often for months to get into Coda at the time. And somehow throughout the year, we managed to launch not only Coda 1.0, but Coda 2.0 as well. So I'd say it was a pretty consequential year. I'm really happy with it. I think we got a lot done. We learned a lot. We got a lot of things right. We made a few mistakes. I think we're going to talk about a few of those.
For sure.
But it was a great year, and I'm hoping to top it in 2020.
Nice. And for anybody who's sort of new to Coda, would you mind defining Coda 1.0, Coda 2.0 for folks, just so they can be on the same page as us today?
Yeah, sure. So when we, at the start of the year, we were in beta. So like I said, you had to sign up and then wait to be accepted into Coda. And we came out with 1.0 in February of 2019. That's the first time we used a message that's very dear to me, which is that Coda can be used to make ducks as powerful as apps. That message is something that was written in the very original Coda framing, and one that I've been working towards. I felt very strongly that we shouldn't ship 1.0 until that message was very clear.
Right.
And the thing that made that message really clear was our mobile launch. And there's a lot of different ways that people think about docs as powerful as apps, and what our view of the world, that the line is artificial, that you can, many things that people do are hard to define. Is that a document or is that an application? But the thing that really made it shine for people was the mobile experience, where you could really feel like it was an application.
Yeah.
So that was February, and then we worked and focused on responding and adjusting and just observing all the different ways that people use Coda.
Right.
And then in October, we shipped Coda 2.0. And the way we talked about Coda 2.0 was it was our Ready for Teams release. And the basic idea was we had seen Coda grow from just individual makers to spread amongst a wide set of teams. And we just observed and watched what they were doing and took their feedback, and we stacked the top things that they requested. And it was a pretty big release. It was workspaces and folders. It was we did a lot of work to make it simpler, cleaner for collaborators, lots of performance work. We took the top 2 features that we'd been asked for over and over again, locking and crosstalk, and we found a way to get both of those built and shipped. And we finally announced pricing with a new type of billing we call maker billing. And so that's what 1.0 was about. Docs as powerful as apps, and 2.0 was about ready for teams.
Awesome. And it looks like Joseph is saying he's made a doc as powerful as an app. Yay. Nice job, Joseph. Yeah. Fantastic. We'd love to see it. That'd be so cool. So as far as then 2019, in addition to, I love that, Tristan. That's amazing. So, in 2019, as you said, Shishir, lots of things were released. There were tons of features that came out, lots of changes. I find that looking back to Coda docs I made last year, it's almost, I almost feel like I'm dealing with a different product. So if you think about all of the feature launches that happened, I think there were maybe 50, if I'm thinking correctly. Did you have any favorite features that we launched? Anything that's kind of top of your list is like, ooh, I really enjoyed this one?
Yeah, I mean, it was we did a little bit of a count at the end of the year. We just sent out an email with the list of the launches, and it's a pleasure to work on a product like this where we're constantly getting great feedback and great ideas, and the engineers are excited. And so when you get that right mix, magic happens. Lots of things start to come out. And so I was thinking a little about, I knew this question would come, and picking amongst 50 different things. I'm sure I'm going to leave someone out.
Yes.
And both users who love a feature and engineers and product managers and designers who help design it. But I picked 3 that I could talk about. And actually, I think I can share my screen.
Oh yeah, go for it.
And I'm gonna focus on 3 specific things that happened in 2019, and I'm going to do them in chronological order.
Looks great. I can see your screen. Nice.
Okay. And I'll use this to also showcase 3 of my favorite docs of the year. These were 3 very memorable documents. I can tell a little bit of a story behind them as well. So the first thing that was super memorable from 2019 was our mobile launch. As I was mentioning, this was something that, in my mind, this phrase, docs as powerful as apps, I would say it to people and they would kind of understand me, but then when they saw the mobile experience, they immediately got what we meant. They saw these tabs that felt like they were right out of a mobile app designer. You saw these tables that looked nice and smooth, and probably the feature that snuck in, but was really impactful was buttons, which is one of our most popular launches of the previous year. Just really came to life in these documents, and this document is really interesting. It was made by a guy named Ben Lee, who many of you who are on the community have probably seen him and heard from him. And he was working at a company as an outdoor bike instructor, and he built this for his team to be able to manage their bike inventory. And this document was one of the first examples we saw of a document transforming into an app on the mobile experience. And it really became a rallying cry for us of what might be possible here. So that's. I
would also say this one kind of surprised us. We were like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" Like it sort of challenged our thinking and took us to that next level too.
Yeah, this was kudos to Ben for doing such a great job of inspiring us. I think some of you know, but we watch very closely what people are doing with Coda. I saw someone posting that they had a great Coda doc. Please send screenshots or examples. If you want to turn into a template, we'd be happy to help you. But we take these examples and really get inspired by what people are trying to do. So this was the first one. This was in February, and this was an awesome start to the year.
Love it.
The second one, so in the template gallery, first of all, I should say as a bit of a segue, the amount the template gallery grew this year was also really awesome.
Yeah.
The number of things in here coming from all these amazing people in the community. Some of them are, one of the best compliments I heard is that somebody said they just come to the template gallery and just read, because some of these are just well written, well constructed ways to get things done. One of my favorite examples in here is this one from Des Trainer. And Des, for people that don't know Des, he's the co-founder of a company called Intercom. If you don't know Intercom, this little product down here. When you hit the question mark, that's Intercom.
Mhm.
Very popular product. But this template actually didn't have a lot to do with Intercom. It had to do with Dez's input on productivity. And one of the reasons I really love this template is its history. It started as a tweet. So Dez tweeted this out. He said, thinking about productivity and its tools, your email is what others think you should work on, your to-do list is what you think you should work on, and your calendar is what you actually work on.
Yes.
Which is, just a really insightful, fun tweet. And he even had these little Venn diagrams to tell how much, how focused you are.
Mhm.
And when we launched PAX tables, and that's this feature here, if people haven't seen it, now when you go into the PAX, we have these PAX tables. You can just drag this in, and you'll get a view of all your Gmail messages and so on. He took that and he turned it into an implementation. And one of the things I love about it is, if you saw this tweet on Twitter, which, looks like, this is, by the way, people don't know this, you can embed tweets in Coda. So it looks like, 1,300 people have liked it and 434 people have retweeted it. If you saw this on Twitter, you might like it, you might retweet it, but then you kind of move along your day.
Mhm.
And he managed to take this and turn it into an implementation. It's very simple. You set up your to-do list, you sync in your email, you sync in your calendar, and then he's got the system, the way you're supposed to work it. You clear your inbox, you rearrange your calendar to map it into that to-do list.
Mhm.
Then you run your week where every item on your list has a clear time when you're going to do it. And then you get to end your week with success. You get to end your
Love
week
that.
with this reflection that says what portion of your time was spent on things that were on your to-do list versus not.
Mhm.
And it transformed my to-do list. This is pretty close to how mine looks now as well. But I just love this idea that Coda could be used to bring an idea to life like this. So
Totally.
something that starts as a tweet. And then the PAX Tables launch was one of the most interesting, impactful launches. It's just amazing to be able to drag in your email, drag in your calendar, so on, into a document and treat it like a building block along with everything else.
I also find it kind of reframe for me, like how I think about designing a doc now, because I don't have to think about, I need things that link out. I can figure out what do I want to bring in, and then how do those pieces fit together. So it sort of changes the design thinking, at least for me. That was my personal experience at the launch too.
It's interesting. I mean, it's one of the most, Coda, obviously you can do anything with Coda, but it's also a lot easier when you start with something.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Starting with start with your calendar or something like that is just a really good place to start, because it's it's a data set that and understand, and so when it comes to life, it's easy to appreciate it.
Totally, yeah.
One last one,
Ooh, can't wait.
and this one. So the features that came out that really enabled this is a number of things that were about visual styling.
Mhm.
We did a big refresh. If people remember at the start of the year, the toolbar was sort of part of the document. We had a border around the page that looked like a piece of paper, something we got rid of. And then we added this ability to have alignment, so you could align your documents and just make them look really good. And a lot of documents got created after this, many of which were very simple. And this one it's an internal document. It's how we run one-on-ones. And if you think about one-on-ones, I think that they're one of the most interesting Coda examples, because if you think Dez's example with that personal productivity system, that feels like a full application. It's your email, your calendar, your task all flowing together. Now, one-on-ones, when we say build a doc as powerful as an app, this is the thing most people think about like a document. Right? If you've got a one-on-one between a manager and a teammate, chances are high that the way you do it is you probably have a document. It's probably going to be in Word or Google Docs or so on, and it's probably structured as date, then notes, then date, then notes. It's probably 30 pages long. And when we brought in the middle of that document somewhere is meaningful performance feedback, and somewhere else is an update on your critical goals and things that the employee wants to call out to the manager, and so on. So when we restructured this in Coda, actually the key feature that was used here was just sections, which I think has been really interesting, watching how people can create sections that create structure and flow in very simple ways. And we start our one-on-one documents. Each pair has their own partnership, because every partnership is different. Team member writes down what their expectations are. Manager writes down theirs. You write some joint agreements. I really like this one. If one of us has a conflict, we'll generally reschedule or cancel, so on. And then each area is just structured around, here's how we're going to take notes, here's how we're going to review goals, here's how we're going to do development feedback and performance feedback. we do this thing called Code and Kudos, which we actually borrowed from a similar template from Square. The Square design team uses Coda for a very similar document that's in the gallery as well, and then an area for best practices. And if you think about these different examples through the year, starting with a really impactful mobile launch made a doc as powerful as an app. This ability to synchronize data into a document that brought to life things like Des's technique here. This one, it was interesting. We ended the year with some of our simplest launches,
yeah, totally.
But it really brought Coda to life of how all these things are coming together, and now you can do everything in Coda from the very simplest to the most complicated.
Yeah.
And I just personally really love this document.
Totally. Also, just a little plug here. If anybody is interested in the design and product management process behind the visual refresh that we did, you can head to our Crowdcast channel. We do have a behind the building block on reimagining a visual experience, and that's with the product manager and one of our designers that goes a little bit deeper. So Shishir, I do want to do just a quick break here because we've got some good questions coming in.
Sure.
So I do just want to highlight one. This first one is from David, which is one of my biggest roadblocks in terms of using Coda is public link collaboration, i.e. a non-Coda user being able to edit or interact with a doc. What's the reasoning and kind of moving forward? And I think this is pretty pertinent because we just had a meeting this morning that is addressing this in particular. So Shishir, do you want to give just a little bit of a hint at things to come here?
Yeah, this is something that it's on our list. Actually, an engineer has a prototype of this that he's been working on. So it's interesting that you should mention. By the way, as a side note, it's amazing to me how often things are suggested by our community that are on our list somewhere, or that somebody's already working on, or that we just did in a hackathon, or so on. But there's a number of things coming on this front that we're working on, and this is definitely a case we'd like to support.
Yeah. So David, for you, just know that this is a roadblock we will be removing in the near future. So stay tuned. There's lots of different pieces to how we're thinking about this. In typical Coda fashion, we don't just check a box. We really want to think about how does this truly play out? What are the problems we're really trying to solve, and kind of reimagining the solution set so we're not just replicating, but really making sure we're doing it right. So stay tuned. We should have some really fun things available for you shortly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Cool. All right. Oh, and we have a question here from Blaze, which is, can you share an example of the most advanced CRM one could build with Coda? So for you, I would definitely recommend checking out our event tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. We're actually going to show you our CRM that we use here at Coda. So you can see how we've been managing our customers from the very beginning. It's got PAX tables, it's got integrations, it's got all kinds of stuff. So definitely join us for that. And if you can't join us in person, we do have a replay available. And there's also tons of templates in the CRM realm on our template gallery. Awesome. So we'll get to more questions in a moment, but those just seemed kind of particularly relevant to our conversation.
Right.
So Shishir, I'd like to kind of shift gears. We've been talking a lot about sort of successes, reflections, and things that we're really excited about. But were there any big surprises in 2019? Things that you didn't expect, or things that took it in a new way? What do you, anything on that for the group that you think would be helpful?
I think surprises, the one that jumped right to mind is the Coda community, and I've had a chance to work on some products with really broad communities. That my last product was YouTube, which has a incredibly vibrant community. Not always the most positive community, but a very vibrant community. And I expected that would happen in Coda, but I didn't expect it to happen quite so fast. And I just find it amazing how inclusive the community is, how responsive it is. It's how supportive it is. I find it. I've regularly directed people there and said, if you can't get an easy answer from us, or sometimes even if you can, go ask on the community. You may find interesting responses. They often find that people respond very quickly. And then the other way around, when we have questions for the community, we just get really meaningful feedback. We'll come out and say, here's we've now gotten very used to launching features and new ideas sometimes well before they launch and testing them out. And everyone here should know that feedback is taken super seriously.
Yes.
And features get adjusted quite a bit before they ship because of that feedback.
Yeah, and actually, this is a really good segue into this question that we had from, let me just make sure I find it. Oh, where'd it go? Yes, Joe's question around the considerations preventing a public roadmap and kind of how we think about it. And I think part of it is so much of what we want to do. You've got some general ideas about where we're going to go and what's going to be most important, but so much of our roadmap is dictated by how people respond to what we put out there. For example, the feature we were chatting about from David's question, this idea of what does publishing look like? That's something that's actually come up brand new, fresh, because it's been clearly stated that this is critical. So we actually have made a lot of shifts. And Shishir, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to share about kind of that particular reasoning or where that fits. But a lot of it is, to my understanding, so that we can be really agile and responsive to what's going on in the now.
That's it. I mean, I think it's we try not to plan too far ahead. We run in 6-week cycles. We call them semi-quarters. We do tend to pick a few longer term bets, and you'll see them coming out, but we try not to overprescribe them. And just leave ourselves agile and responsive. And like I said, last year we managed to do not only a 1.0 but also a 2.0. We shipped 50 different launches. Our ability to do that means that we don't want to overcommit on something that we're not sure is going to happen. That said, if you ask us about anything, ask us. I think a few people have asked here. Feel free to ask on the community as well. We'll try as hard as we can to give you a straight answer. That's something we're working on. That's something we're not working on. That's something we think is a good idea or a bad idea. Something where we're looking for input. That's been my way of handling that.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll just sort of layer on top of that is we take feedback very seriously, just like Shishir was saying, to the point that, of course, surprise, surprise, we have a Coda doc where all of our customer feedback comes in. We tag everything meticulously. Our product managers are always monitoring that. So even if, maybe it's not something that's happening right away, it is always taken into account. It is always addressed during planning. And one thing that I find is that our PMs and our engineers are much more attuned to that than what I've seen at other organizations.
Yeah.
So please keep the feedback coming. The only way that we can plan is by hearing from you. So please continue to be loud and proud about your feature requests.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about learning. So Shishir, let's imagine that you and I can hop into a time machine right now. We go back to the beginning of 2019. What are we going to do differently? What's on your list?
So it's an easy answer for 2019. I think we could have done better with our pricing launch.
Yeah.
And that, it's interesting when I look back at it, the phrase that got used internally for our pricing launch. So, for people who aren't familiar, we launched pricing along with Coda 2.0 with a period before it was going to be enforced and some period for getting feedback. So thankfully we left some time for that so that we could get feedback. We had spent some time with different users and customers asking beforehand, but we hadn't spent as much time as I would have liked with our community on that. And our community really responded, and very specific feedback. And we ended up changing the plan about 3 weeks in. So it was pretty fast turnaround. And the phrase that got used here was we went from a half measure to a full measure. So for people who are fans of Breaking Bad, you'll understand the reference. Otherwise, you can probably guess a little bit of what that means. But the idea behind our pricing was this idea of maker billing, and by shifting our model and the tweaks we made, we were able to get to a more clear version of maker billing.
Yeah. Awesome. And then could you chat a little bit more about kind of how you and the team approached that pivot? Because I do think it's really interesting how all of you figured out how to do that in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, I've actually been asked about this more than I would have expected.
Interesting.
For a moment that was pretty tense for the company and for me, I think a lot of people took a lot of positive learnings out of it as well.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when a team has to make a fast change, it can bring out the best and what a team is really capable of. So basically what happened was we had this idea when we started thinking about pricing. We observed how people were using Coda, and we have this nomenclature we use of makers and contributors. And we know that for Coda, the first person in a team that really falls in love with Coda tends to be the maker, tends to be the person that for whom Coda represents opportunity. It represents a way to express an idea that they've been trying to implement, or a change that they've been trying to get people to do. And sometimes being that change agent can come with friction, right? That your
Right.
collaborators may not see it as positively. And so when we came to thinking about pricing, we said, what if we could come up with a pricing model that focused on the maker? And interestingly, almost every product in the space doesn't do that. You have makers, editors, and viewers, and basically every product in the space charges evenly for makers and editors. And so we thought, what if we charged for makers? And we came up with a fun name for it. We called it maker billing. But we were a little bit resistant to going all the way, mostly because we hadn't seen anybody else go all the way.
Yeah.
And so we had this notion of what we called editor caps. There was these ratios that on the pro tier, you get 2 editors per maker. On the team tier, you get 5 editors per maker, and so on. So that was the idea. And it was basically a safety valve. I mean, it wasn't intended to really mean anything. We didn't intend for people to hit those limits. In fact, we did a lot of analysis to prove to ourselves that 95% of people were never going to hit those limits. But what the community said to us, we got all this feedback back from the community. I think probably the longest thread on the community. Some of it fairly critical. And our first reactions was like anybody's first reactions was defensive. Like, oh, that's just people that are not happy with pricing. People don't like to pay for things. And as I read deeper on the feedback, that's not the case. In fact, I found that most people who have fallen in love with Coda are actually quite excited. Not people don't love to pay for things, but they were excited to make sure that the business is viable, make sure that that we're able to keep producing great products for everybody. And if you actually dug into the feedback, it was quite specific. And it came
amazing
in.
Stuff.
It was a very simple. There was one in particular where the person said, "Your pricing plan is making me think about pricing when I share a document. And if I understand your philosophy right, the whole point was that you shouldn't think about pricing when you share."
Yeah.
And so that sounded terrible. And so we went this was. We went, like Maria was saying, we review feedback very regularly. We have this document that pumps it all in. We categorize it all. And it was pretty resounding. I mean, this was not a small amount of feedback that said, your editor caps are causing us to think too much about pricing. So we ended up writing a piece. I titled it Thought Exercise. What if we got rid of editor caps? What if we did true maker billing? And originally it was just meant like that. But the way we tend to make these decisions at Coda, you write a document, and then we tend to use we actually turned it into an in-doc template, is a sentiment table, which allows people to come in and say what they feel about something. And we put a little checkbox on there that hides everybody else's responses. And I find that's really important, that if you're going to make a hard decision, you have to give people safe space to say what they really think before the groupthink comes in. Then all the things come in and people say, well, that'll be hard, or there'll be this risk, or so on. But when we're able to pull it apart and say, what do you think? Should we do this or not? It was pretty overwhelming inside the company that we should take like I said, the full measure, not the half measure. So we decided. We held a set of meetings to make sure we got the nuances right. This time we went back and spoke to a number of people in the community. I can't remember the exact number, but it was hundreds. And I personally sat in on a lot of those calls and heard feedback directly. And then we committed and we launched as fast as we could, knowing that the faster we could shift that model, the more people could understand it and plan the rest of what they were trying to do with their teams. So it was definitely in my mind a mistake, but hopefully a case where we responded well and recovered from that mistake instead of digging ourselves further.
Yeah, and really, I think it was a team of 5 or 6 people working pretty much full time on solving that problem.
Yeah,
right.
And it affected all sorts of things throughout the company, and actually one thing people may not know, but most of the way the company operates, we're about 60 people at Coda now. Many of our any project will have a core group. Interestingly, we call them the makers, and then they'll have a brain trust, which is a set of people that you can think of in normal nomenclature as reviewers. But many of our meetings at Coda and many of our decisions are open forums, and this one was as well. So we actually solicited feedback from basically everyone at Coda. And so everyone was a part of the decision, and then the core team that actually had to deliver. 5 or 6 people had to really hone in and get that delivered. So I think a very interesting experience, and a very good learning one.
Yeah, awesome. And this is actually a good segue to a question that we have here, which is, do we have any plans to allow makers to charge third parties for the use of their docs/apps? So I know this is something we've considered since the inception of the gallery, really, something that would be interesting. But Shishir, anything that you want to share on this particular topic?
I love this question, and the answer is I don't yet know how we'll do it specifically. And in fact, if you'd like to make suggestions, we'd love to hear it.
Please let us know.
But philosophically, I love that we had asked this question a lot, and I really love it because it's sort of expressing what I think we're hoping to feel with Coda, is that what we're doing with Coda is inspiring this generation of makers, and that allows them to not only express themselves and not only to reshape their teams, but to build their own businesses and experiences around it. And I know there are some people already building companies based on Coda. Some of them, using it internally. Some of them using it as a tool as they go to customers or consult or so on. But the ability to directly sell your work is something that I'd really love to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And let's actually take a couple more questions because we've got a lot of really good ones coming in and want to make sure that we address them. So another feature request here, which is dark mode. Is it 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes away? Kind of where does that fit? The one thing I'll just put out there before I toss it over to you, Shishir, is that you can use a Chrome extension to make Chrome go into dark mode, which is a little hack to get you close. It's obviously not perfect, but a nice kind of mid-range step. So Shishir, I want to chat a little bit about dark mode, how we're thinking about it, where that fits.
It's longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Those are my only 3 options. I don't think there's any philosophical objection to doing it. I think the tricky part about modes and so on is it increases the set of experiences we need to test for and make sure look great. And so our first priority on that was addressing browser support and making sure that Coda looks great across different browsers, and that obviously increases the number of ways that people can experience their documents. Then we started adding some of the visual styling, the ability to go and have auto and wide sections and so on. So those are all headed down the ways of giving people more control, being able to use the environments they want the way they want to. And so in that thinking, dark mode is definitely on the list, but not something we're working on right now.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing that we are, in typical Coda fashion, trying to take a look at the holistic problem, right? Instead of just seeing dark mode as one feature, thinking about it as, how do we think about styling and color and branding overall on the experience? So really trying to make sure that if we solve this problem, right, when we solve it, that we solve the bigger problem as well, so that we can be really efficient about it. But yes, we hear you. And I will say there are so many people internally here at Coda who are always like, could we do dark mode? Could we do dark mode? We want it too. So definitely stay tuned. Thank you for your patience on that.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And then we have another question here on when will we have right to left text support? I would say, right now we're really focusing on a lot of other usability elements, but we do know that there's opportunities when it comes to localization that we do need to make good on that. But Shishir, I'm not sure if there's anything else on that larger localization. Okay. Yeah. Great. Awesome. Cool. All right. And let's see, another question here, which is any plans for API access to text objects in sections, such as the ability to create, insert text, find, replace, format, correct, and maybe apply NLP processes? I haven't heard anything about this, Shishir, but I don't know, around the water cooler, are you privy to any other information there?
We haven't done it yet. Obviously, the way that Coda is constructed, it's possible. And a lot of those objects are actually underneath. They're actually tables, which is maybe something people don't realize.
Yeah.
Like, controls and the way sections are stored and so on are actually tables in Coda as well. And so exposing them may not be that difficult. But there's a few cases that we want to work on before we do it. It's something that I'm sure we'll do, but not something coming right away.
Great. Thanks so much for your question, Bill. Love that. Fantastic. And then we have another good question here, which is another roadblock that I experience is our parent company is on O365. They're on G Suite. Outlook support coming anytime soon as far as adoption. So this is actually from some meetings we were having last week.
Yeah, this one I have pretty good news. We're actively working on this. So the first version of it launched with with actually single sign-on support. So
Yep.
so we now, for enterprises, we'll support that. The next step is coming with Office 365. Part of that, so people are aware, there's sort of two different parts to how our integration with Google works. One is the login process, and the other is what we call the file system, and how the permissions and documents are managed. And so being able to support the full, a non-Google deployment requires allowing decoupling both of those things.
Yeah.
So, but we're very actively working on that.
Yep, we were actually, Shishir and I and several other people were in a meeting last week reviewing a lot of the details of the plumbing and how it would work. So like Shishir said, this is something we're actively putting our attention on. So
Yes.
Hopefully we'll have some good news for you soon. Love that, David. All right, fantastic. Cool. All right. Then we have, are there plans to expand on the exporting functions, including exporting sections? So I think this sort of fits into print and that kind of section.
Yeah, heavily requested. It's being built. I don't want to overpromise it yet because I'm not sure we have a timeline for shipping it yet. But it is definitely sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And I will say, again, just stories from the Coda Underground. One of our engineers, his wife is a writer, and she's always on him about trying to get us to launch this feature. So if anything, we can thank her for her consistent dedication.
Very consistent.
Excellent. Great. Here, this is kind of a cool question, Shishir. I'd love to hear from you about this, which is, what are the most popular consolidations of tools that we see with Coda? So folks that replace XYZ with Coda, how we see them coming together. I think Des, this is a great example of the personal side, but
Right.
I'd love to hear from you about what you see out in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a pretty wide spectrum. So, and like any product, any horizontal product like Coda, there's a very long tail of what people do with Coda. I mean, certainly we see some cases of people using Coda for managing teams and managing projects, and so we see a lot of cases where people manage goals and OKRs or tasks or timelines and so on. That we see fairly often. I think we see a number of cases where the core things that people are working on are things that have to do with customers and tracking communication or interactions. Inventory, like for example, the one we looked at earlier with the bike case, is a pretty broad and general version of that that we've done. One thing to mention is, I think one of the nice parts about Coda is in a lot of cases we will sometimes we'll replace tools, but oftentimes people will use Coda as an adjunct to those tools. And it's one of the reasons that packs are such an important part of Coda, is that in many cases the best way to get something out of your what you've already invested in, whether it be Shopify or Jira or Google Calendar or so on, is to bring it into Coda and fill in the rest of the process around it. And that might be the automations that come with it. It might be as simple as meeting notes that incorporate that data. So those are pretty wide spectrum of different ones we see.
Yeah, and I would say one of my personal favorites, just to share, is that sort of team health, right? If we think about a team trying to work on making something that doesn't exist yet exist, or change the way something is, finding a team being able to create a space that allows them to be able to work really efficiently. So like my team, for example, we have one Coda doc that is where we have all of our OKRs, all of our meeting notes for our weekly team meeting, our team sentiment where folks check in how they're doing and what's on deck. Also the ability for us to then send out those notes automatically. So no one poor person has to be like copying and pasting. It's like one place that brings people in where they can stay connected. It's a resource. We can get all the information about what's going on. So if you're the new person on the team, you just jump into that doc, and then it takes care of Slack reminders to update your status, emails of all of our notes to the rest of the company, and really just allowing us to stop having to worry about the process and thinking more about, how can we just focus on what we really need to focus on, and the doc catches us. That's my personal favorite. It's not sort of a big, amazing example, but it's something that makes a big difference in my experience, at least, for what that's worth. Awesome. We have a really good question, which is actually a wonderful segue into one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Shishir, which is really about kind of what are we most excited about for 2020? Things that we're thinking about moving forward, or the things that are really getting you energized for this year.
Yeah, I think I'll share some themes, and then we actually want to turn this into an exercise with the group. So we'll do that in a second. I mean, you probably saw as I started with reflecting on 2019. We started 2019 with a lot of the core building blocks of Coda and getting mobile right and getting packs and automation. Then we got packs tables out, and you've probably seen a theme of addressing a lot of the simpler cases and getting started well with Coda. One thing we hear a lot is that you can do almost anything in Coda, but for some people, they may not know where to start.
Yeah, it can be scary.
Or how to use it for one of those simple cases. One of the reasons I love that one-on-one template is it's such a simple example. And so I think you'll see thematically a lot of what we'll be working on this year is geared towards those simple cases and making sure that those really shine in Coda. Now, that said, Marina, we're brainstorming about this earlier and thought, wouldn't it be fun to make this a little bit collaborative? And so what I'm going to do here is we're going to ask you to help us with our list for 2020. And I'm just going to create a new document here, and probably a good way to showcase a few things. By the way, if you didn't catch that, coda.new now will create new Coda documents, and calling this the Year of the Maker webinar. And I'd love to know, actually, let me do it this way. We'll use one of my other favorite features of the year, is we call these drag and drop templates.
Yeah, I love these. Life changers.
Yeah, there's so many good ones in here. Lots of different ways to go and try different things. One that we use a lot is this topic voter. And very simple idea. People can put in their ideas here. Generally change the title to whatever the question is. So what would you like to see?
And thinking back to when Shishir was talking about how the team was addressing pricing and how people could share their perspectives, this template is the starting point of that, where folks can share how they're feeling and also be able to upvote and downvote various elements.
Yeah, and so what I'll ask here, I don't think we need the done because we're not really doing that. But I will ask people to jump in and go ahead and add their own ideas.
And maybe we want to add a button here just so it's really easy for folks to click and add. Also, buttons are my favorite Coda feature. So just for me, Shishir.
Let's do it. Let me get the link into the comment thread, and then I'll go add that.
Yeah.
So this is where we will be working. We'll call this year. Did you get the link?
Yep, looks good.
All right, feel free to jump in. We'll add,
David's there with us already.
David's there.
He gets our speed award.
And actually, feel free to add ideas. Feel free to
Yeah, so for those of you who have not used buttons before, buttons are a really great way to create interactivity in your doc. This is the one we see all the time, just adding a row. So instead of having to click and use the plus menu, you can just make it really easy for folks to click a button to add a status, for an example.
And we'll give one of the reasons people like buttons is
and of course give it some color. Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Looks like some folks are typing. Nice.
Yeah. So I'd love to see what people come up with. I was going to have a fun graphic for this as well.
Oh yes.
So we'll stick this up here. To make
Fantastic. Nice and festive.
Yeah. What would you like to see in 2020? By the way, this is awfully close to how a lot of our meetings run. So you'll see in a lot of cases people jumping into documents and working on this. Actually, I was thinking another thing that people may not have seen. If you see people jumping in a document and trying things like this, you might be worried about what if somebody does something that they weren't supposed to. So one thing we can do here is we can turn this into interact mode, which means that not everybody can go and change those things now. And so now you can use the buttons, controls, change table values, and add rows. And it also has this nice side effect of the doc looks cleaner because it hides a lot of the controls, it hides the toolbar. And so nice way to incorporate everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lots of good ideas. It looks like integrations are a really common request. Folks are thinking about how do we extend. And so Shishir just highlighted that column, that vote column. If you see something that you're like, oh yes, me too, go ahead, click that little upvote thumbs up sign. That'll give us a little more data. And also, just so everybody knows, after every webinar that we produce, we always send the recording to our product management team. And I also summarize sort of the events in general and like common themes. So anything you share with us today is going right to the product team afterwards. So please be as specific, as wordy, add as much stuff as you like. Write us a haiku, write us an essay, whatever works for you works for us. We definitely want to hear what you're thinking.
These are great.
Nice.
Many of these on our list. So great to see.
Cool. Also, I really appreciate seeing people use formatting, the bold and the colors. Well done. Well done.
They know how to earn votes.
Exactly.
I haven't seen an emoji yet. We'll see.
Yes. Who does it first? Who does it first? Also, I would ask for those of you who put in like an integration, if you could also share a little bit more about what you'd like that integration to do, like the HubSpot integration, Asana integration. If you can even just give us a sentence of like, solve this problem, or I'd love it to be doing this, this, and this, that allows us to be more specific and triangulate on what you're doing. So please go ahead, add some more details there. Yeah,
I'll pick one. Actually, there's a couple in here for forms. That's one we've been talking a lot about. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what people would expect in either Google Forms Pack or in a Coda Forms implementation.
And of course, our Evan is the first to put emojis in. That's how you always know it's an Evan-made doc. There's always lots of emojis inside. Awesome. Yeah, so go ahead, take a little bit more time there. I guess maybe while folks are adding in their detail, Shishir, what is kind of your big passion for 2020? What is the thing that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, on the product side, I think this idea of being able to address some of the simpler scenarios is very important. If I had to just think a little bit broader about the market, you'll see a few things coming in the next couple weeks, actually, for how we can make it easier for people to express themselves through Coda. I find that, and some of the questions here actually are good segues to that, or ideas here. But I like to think about, if I go back to, for example, looking at that document from Des and how he brought that tweet to life in a Coda doc. I think that idea, sometimes I like to refer to great Coda docs as being productized blog posts.
Ooh, that's great. I love that.
It's almost like you can write an idea and you can just bring it to life in Coda. And so one of the things I'm really excited about this year is seeing that happen more and more and more. And seeing more people be able to do that themselves, I have this dream that, anything that you might write as a blog post or as an idea or even as a tweet can turn into a magical Coda doc for others to be able to use. Yeah,
and really being able to share what's inside your brain in a way that's interactive and usable. It's not just a static, here's some words, but like, hey, I want you to try out my idea. I want you to play with it. I want you to have like a sneak peek at what's going on inside my brain. So definitely everybody keep adding your thoughts here to this doc, but I do want to make sure, since we have about 12 minutes left, that we devote the rest of the time purely to your questions. So Shishir, get ready, lightning round.
Sure.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a good question here from Bill, which is one of the most important aspects of information solutions hinges on real-time information. Are there any plans for supporting HTTP POST GET, webhooks, and perhaps integrated real-time networks like PubNub, Ably, and Kinesis?
All possible. We have especially for the first ones, we do have an implementation internally working. So we just have to figure out exactly, with many of those types of launches, it's just about finding the right launch path and making sure it's secure. Right. So that's all we're working through, and then we'll get those out.
Yeah, because I think one of the big things we're really paying attention to is, now that we're really positioning ourselves with things like workspaces and all of that as a team place, we do want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on that security side for all of you as well. Excellent.
By the way, one ask on the what would I see in 2020, the ability to charge third parties for white label application being first is very interesting. Yeah. I would love to, maybe someone could start the community thread for it. I'd love to hear, A, what types of use cases people have in mind, and B, the types of ways you'd expect to be able to charge third parties.
Yes.
That's a very active discussion right now.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Next question, which is, we built our company's project management system on Coda. That's awesome. Well done, Chris. And we could do some major upgrades to our setup if we could do two-way cross-doc sync. Is that on the roadmap for the near future?
Yeah, so we for people familiar with this, we shipped crossdock, a read-only version of crossdock, and then a few weeks later, along with the pricing revamp, we shipped crossdock buttons, which I like to call 1.5 way crossdock sync.
Love it.
So it's definitely not all the way, and you can approximate some two-way behaviors, but obviously two-way would be better. And the ability to directly edit things and so on, just to give people a sense of what the challenges are. A lot of the challenges are in understanding the namespace and boundaries. What happens, when you're editing a cell from a different doc? What context are you in? What does the formula language do? What does the at reference builder do? And so on. So there's a few tricky problems for how to solve it. So those are the things where we're waiting to see how far we get with 1.5 way, and then we'll work on 2 way. But very heavily requested, definitely on the list.
Yeah, and I would say, Chris, if you want to send us an email, either through the support channel or just generally, with kind of what you would imagine 2-way sync for your project management system doing, the more detail you can give us, the better. I feel like that's our consistent answer, but please let us know as much detail as possible about how that would work in a way that would help you, because that helps us make sure we deliver on the promise. Nice. All right. Let's see. We've got anything that you can share regarding performance plans. Sometimes I'd like to jot something down, but load times make it not ideal. And I would definitely recommend, Andres, if you didn't attend it, checking out our interview behind the building block called Tackling Performance with Angad, who's one of our product managers who worked on our initial kind of performance push. It gives a lot of contextual information on this particular launch in particular. But I would say in general, when it comes to performance, you're probably not going to notice an immediate, here it is as a feature, but like a consistent, ever improving option. So Shishir, I'm not sure if there's anything else on that.
Yeah, I mean, so a few things happening on performance. So we put a lot of push into performance last year, in particular on calculation perf and scroll perf. So when we say performance, there's lots of different parts of it. So we put in a lot of improvements for making calculations faster, and then making scroll, especially with long tables, work better. And we got up to, for technical folks in the audience, the high watermark there is getting to 60 frames per second. That's generally what people view as what the human eye can see, and what the computer can respond to. And we were able to get to that for scroll perf. And on the calculation side, we were both able to get a lot of fixes out, but I actually think one of the things that was really valued is for people who haven't seen it, I can show it here. There's a performance analyzer that you can get to from here that allows you to debug what is working or not working in your doc and give you a sense of it. And it turned out that in a lot of cases, what was slow in a document was something that the maker might be able to adjust themselves. The next set of things we're working on are actually related to that, are load time first, and then text performance. So you'll see improvements on both of those, instead of work to make load times better, and then make it text editing in particular better as well. Likely after that is when we'll get to memory usage, and that's all of these things you sort of go in order, and you work your way through, and it's nice problem to have that people are pushing Coda to its limits that way. And I totally understand. We run the whole company on Coda, and so we feel the impacts of performance issues very deeply. But that's how we've currently ordered them.
Yeah, and I would say just another plug on that performance analyzer. I find it's just helpful for me to understand, well, what part of this doc is slow? Where is the slowness coming into play? And it might just be a formula that's not fully optimized. It might just be like one section. And I usually find that it allows you to tweak, because as doc makers, we all know that you probably start with one part and then you just keep adding things on as you go. And sometimes that means you're not building efficiently. You're building for the need in the moment. So that the performance analyzer can really help you figure out, how do you take this system you've built and make sure that the snow is plowed so you can get from place to place to place to place. So I find that to be really helpful. Just another little plug there. Awesome.
Really good ideas on here.
I know, I love it. I know this list is amazing. It's absolute gold. We had a question here from Ron around plans to add support for Google Forms. This is again something we've been thinking about from day one and really trying to think about how does this work. And I think Shishir, you sort of spoke to this already, which is great.
Yeah, we'd love use cases for this.
Yes, please let us know how you envision needing to use it for your day-to-day. All right, let's see. What is the philosophy about Coda being an inclusive resource for everything and allowing storage versus being a connector and not hosting assets? Shishir, want to chat a little bit about this?
Being an inclusive resource for everything, allowing storage versus being is this? I don't know if John can clarify, but
I think this is like hosting assets. So maybe I want to be able to have a bunch of images. Yeah, and Judge, please let us know if there's any more detail on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would upvote what is currently number 7 on the list here. Totally possible. It's not philosophical at all. We shipped the first step of that was the ability to upload images. So we can hold images as the image type. We'll upload it and we'll host it for you. And we're working on the ability to have that be any file, any attachment as well.
Got it. Awesome. Let's see. Next question, which is any exciting packs coming soon that you can discuss? I'm not sure if we can discuss them, but I do know that there are some exciting packs coming up.
There are. And my guess is that there's probably some that came recently that people may have missed as well.
Do tell.
And I was just doing this one with my daughter last night, there's a Google Translate pack, which is absolutely insane. And she had so much fun taking words and funny phrases and turning them into different languages.
I love it.
Testing her parents on how good their multilingual skills are.
Indeed.
That was a really interesting one. LaTeX.
LaTeX.
For people who like to do mathy stuff in their docs. What are some other interesting ones that came out recently? I mean, this is an area that I think you'll see a lot come from some of these different ones soon as we get more and more of these ready to go.
And I would say for any of you who included pack requests in your sort of what would you like to see in 2020, including how you would want to use it, right? Like, so Salesforce, do you want it to be a visual force page? Do you want it to be pushing information between the two? The more detail you can give us, the absolute better that is. So totally let us know. All right. We've got, will the API expand to cover the view method in GScript soon? I do not know.
Oh, to get to views. Well, that's a good request. I don't have an answer for you. If you post that to the community, we'll get you an answer. I believe we made the changes to the API. Maybe that's where the question is coming from. But we haven't updated the Google Apps script yet.
Oh, okay.
Because we had to make it in order to get, it's the same way that crosstalk buttons work.
Got it.
And so there's a few things that need to be updated in the app script. I know the engineer that maintains that is pretty anxious to do it. So if you just post about that in the community, we can get your response.
Awesome. Great. Fantastic. All right. Is there an Asana integration coming in the near future?
Please upvote it. That's it's probably worth mentioning our list of ideas for packs is incredibly long.
Yeah.
One of the meta things I would like to be able to do, and I hopefully we'll get to this year, is allow others to be able to build packs. And when we do that, then hopefully this request will go out to all of you, not just to us. But until then, we're working through the list as fast as we can. Asana is definitely on the list. We hear it, but please upvote it.
Yeah, nice. And then we have another question here around, will there be a HubSpot integration? This is something that's certainly, I would say, a little bit further along in our thinking about how that might work. So definitely stay tuned on that. And I think Shishir's previous answer around the giant list of packs holds true here as well.
It's amazing, like the long tail of things that people use.
It's so cool. And there's certain things we're like, oh, what is that tool? We better go and Google that. Let's check it out. All right, let's see. Got it. So, we've got a good idea here, which is like the product still feels a little bit complicated. And sometimes that's hard for me to get my team on board. I think this gets to what you were talking about, Shishir, around our big focus right now is how do we make getting started and those initial wins feel a lot more attainable. That's a big focus of how we're thinking about the sort of the next phases But yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to share about this.
There's sort of two types of things we work on when we approach this question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's clear to us as well that Coda is very powerful, and so that can lead to cases where things can feel harder than they should. And there's sort of two ways I think about it. One is take those experiences and just make them simpler. And so, as an easy example here, if people didn't catch this, actually Maria wrote a really good post about some of these. When you used to come to a table and you would try to filter it, you would see a formula bar that can be very intimidating. Now this is a structured builder where you can go and add things and say, I want to find all things where votes up is greater than some number or so on. So the ability to take existing interactions and make them better. The other thing I find is that just emphasizing the simple cases. One of the things I'd advise as you're getting your team started in Coda is sometimes people come and they look at the gallery and they say, look at all these amazing things you can do. And then they try to do some of the more complicated things in the gallery. And while we love them from a perspective of showcasing what's possible, sometimes it's actually easier to start with very simple use cases and things like taking great notes in meetings or running great one-on-ones and so on before you build up to something that has lots of automations and packs and so on. So I think there's sort of two different approaches here. Is let's make the complicated things in Coda simpler, but also help people be successful with those simple scenarios first.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I always reinforce for people is you don't have to have the big, awesome, fancy with all the bells and whistles. If it's something that solves a simple problem for you, that is just as valuable as a giant doc as powerful as an app. And also just another plug for what we saw Shishir do to start off this exercise of using those in-doc templates. If you wanted to do this voting table before we had those, it was a ton of formulas. I wrote the help article for it. It was very long. And I think this is the other thing I always like to just, hey, start with an in-doc template. Then you can always add more as you want. And that's a really great way forward. But hopefully, Wenchen, we can make it easier as we continue to work on these features Shishir is talking about for you and your team to be able to get on board.
Yeah, there's a great set in there.
All right. So I know, Shishir, you do have a hard stop because you have to get to a school event, but maybe we could take one more question?
Sure.
Yeah? All right. So without question, packs are the single greatest gateway to Coda innovation and unlocking the vast energies from your aftermarket supporters. When will it be possible for makers to actually make packs?
Oh,
what a lovely question, Bill.
Yeah, it's like lobbing one to me. Is that Bill?
Yes.
Thanks, Bill. I hope as soon as possible. I mean, it's worth saying that the ability for others to be able to make packs would free up a big portion of our own development effort. So it's well worth it for us to do that. We've got a few pieces of work to do to be able to do that. So we're working on the re-architecture to make that easy, make it possible to secure them and approve them and so on, because obviously it is running code in somebody else's document. But I really hope that we'll be able to do that soon.
Nice. Awesome. Great. And then the only other question, which is what about the ability to add notes to the formula editor? I know this is something we've thought about as like annotated templates and also letting the doc maker be able to include notes. I don't think we have any formal updates on this, but it is certainly something we're thinking about. Yeah, Shishir?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think if people didn't catch it, we did ship the ability, the formula editor now supports multi-line. So for example, you can come in here and this one, actually someone already did it. And so you can now do spacing and multi-line and so on for those more complicated formulas. The ability to add comments inside that is also on the list, something we've been talking about, but we haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Awesome. And we've got a request to make the formula editor bigger. Add that to our 2020 thing here.
Yes,
love it.
Please.
All right. Well, I know, like I said, Shishir has to get off to a school event, so we have to go let him go on with the rest of his day. But we just want to thank all of you so much for giving us your time, your attention, your insights, your very detailed feedback. Honestly, these are the best gifts that we can receive as product makers ourselves. And as Shishir said, the community has really been, from the beginning, our best blessing, and it continues to just be one of the most wonderful parts of being able to work on this product in particular. So thank all of you for making 2019 the year it was. We look forward to 2020 and being able to celebrate even more with all of you. Keep your feedback coming, keep your ideas coming. Join us in future Crowdcasts, and also definitely join the community at community.coda.io. It's a great group of folks, and you can often get an even better answer faster from them. So with that being said, thank you, Shishir. Thank all of you.
Thank you, Maria. And for those of you that haven't checked out, Maria is absolutely amazing at running these webinars. And I highly recommend attending the next one. I think there's one tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes, we're going to be talking about CRMs tomorrow. So get a little sneak peek at how we run our CRM here at Coda.
Yeah.
All right. Have a wonderful night, everybody, or a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are in this wonderful world of ours. And we'll see you next time.